I have always been fascinated by old houses. Since childhood, I have been fascinated by their history, their walls, which seem to tell me 1,000 stories if only I knew how to listen to them. While making plans for the future, I decided that I would get into restoration, restoring old houses that at first glance had lost all value. But one decision changed my life forever. In one of the suburbs, in a small town, I came across an ad for a house for sale. It wasn't too old, but it wasn't new either, clearly built in the early 20th century. The house stood on the outskirts of town, far from the main street, among thick trees hidden from prying eyes, a perfect place to start your project. As I got closer, I felt more than just an interest in old architecture. There was something hidden in this house, something that beckoned to me. When I first walked into the house, I immediately noticed how the air was saturated with antiquity. It reeked of wood dust. Sometimes it felt like time had frozen in this house. From the corners where the dust lay in layers, I could feel like I was part of some past. But what surprised me the most was the feeling that the house hadn't told its biggest secret yet. I knew I'd have to do a lot of work with a house like this. It was in a bad state. Cracked walls, rotted roof, windows that had long since lost their light. But it was exactly the kind of house that could be brought back to life, filling it with the spirit of old times, creating something new here, leaving respect for the past. At first, I focused on the top floor. On the second floor, behind an ancient wooden door, were two large rooms. One had a huge fireplace that was clearly in need of restoration, and the other had windows overlooking a small garden where there could be a cozy reading nook. I started by dismantling the old wood paneling to see what condition the walls were in. I was in the mood for something ordinary that day. Perhaps a couple of old newspapers, abandoned items someone had once left behind. But, as is often the case with stories, fate likes to throw in surprises. When I removed one of the panels in the corner of the room, I noticed a strange niche in the wall that I hadn't seen before. It was hidden from view, but something told me there might be something important inside. I made the decision to open the niche. The wooden boards crackled under my hands, and when I finally opened the hidden space, I noticed that there was some kind of cloth wrapped inside. At first glance, it looked like an old blanket or bedspread, but upon closer inspection, I realized it was burlap, carefully wrapped around something heavy. When I unwrapped the cloth, the first thing I saw was metal parts. It was a rifle. I could not believe my eyes. In my hands, I was holding a real Sturmgewehr 44, an assault rifle famous during World War II, a powerful modern weapon for the time. But what struck me most was that the weapon was in excellent condition. It was neatly wrapped in burlap and covered in a layer of oil. It was so strange. Why was the rifle hidden right here, and why was it preserved so well? I felt my breath catch. In that moment, I realized that I had stumbled upon something much more important than just an old house. These rifles aren't just artifacts. They are a piece of history, a part of a war I didn't know about. I touched the metal of the rifle. Its heaviness was palpable, and the wood on the buttstock showed almost no signs of time. It was as if the weapon had just returned from the front. My thoughts at that moment were filled with questions. Why did it end up here? This house had been built before the war, and various people had lived in it. But as it turned out, during World War II, the house served as a shelter for officers of the German army. At first, I couldn't believe that this could be true, but after a few days of searching the archives, I found out that there were many strategically important facilities in this very neighborhood during the war, and this house could well have been one of those shelters. I started digging deeper. The locals said that during the war, this house was used to house German army officers, who used it as a headquarters. Few people knew about its past, and those who did preferred to keep quiet. It is not surprising that valuables such as weapons could have been hidden here. Perhaps they were hidden as part of some plan, or perhaps they were weapons to be used if necessary. I soon discovered other items hidden in other parts of the house, a couple more rifles, ammunition, maps, and documents. All of this was hidden in such a way that it was almost impossible to find without serious attention. The rifles were perfectly preserved thanks to a layer of oil that protected the metal from rust, and the burlap probably served as additional protection from the outside elements.